Welcome back to Huddle YouTube channel. I'm your host Owen, and today I just got done listening for the second time now the Draft Dudes talk about my take I submitted for their Takes and Take episode. I'm a big Draft Dudes fan, and I haven't really submitted a take in a couple months now. I just haven't really been plugged in with it and things like that. I always kind of forget that I have to plug it in before Friday morning or Thursday night. So I finally put one in and they reacted to it, and I was kind of entertained by the reaction with it. I'm going to justify it in a second, but first I'm going to play the clip so you guys can hear what they said before I respond to it.
Let's take from the Weekly Huddle podcast for Takes on Takes. Lock in Xavier Hutchinson to the Bills at the end of round one.
No, I won't.
I'm not locking any player to any team.
I'm not going to, so quit asking.
On October 21st. Really?
Well, no, hang on. I think I'm going to lock Will Anderson number one. I think I feel pretty comfortable with that.
No.
Do you?
No, yeah, I do.
Like number one in the actual draft?
Yeah, I feel pretty confident.
Now, the Weekly Huddle
Chris.
podcast has a big-time slam dunk coming if this happens. And we're not saying that it won't. I just think it's really aggressive to say that to lock any player to any team.
Is that the kind of wide receiver Buffalo needs in the midst of,
I don't know.
like, Gabe Davis' ability to play on the outside and win down the field? And
Joe's like, I don't want to do this right now.
Sure, I don't know. I mean, like, I think you're pretty okay. I don't know. I would want maybe I'm really twisted up on this, man.
Joe's flustered.
I wasn't prepared to live in a world where I was projecting Xavier Hutchinson to the Bills. He's a good player, right? I don't know how dynamic he is. He's got great hands and ball skills. He plays big, physical. I like those things about him. I think he can help any team. I don't sit here and say that this is absolutely the right guy for the Bills to go after for the receiver core. And, you know, I have some other needs ahead of it, but I think he's a good player, and you should always want to get good players.
So I wasn't... Okay, so first off, yes, it's a bit of an aggressive take, Xavier Hutchinson to the Bills, locking it in. You don't want to lock in anybody for a pick yet. Like, even like when Chris said with Will Anderson for the first overall pick, you don't want to lock anybody in right now, no matter how of a sure thing they are. And Xavier Hutchinson is far from a sure thing. Because you don't know, Bills may not even be picking in the bottom half of the first. They might trade their first because they're picking in the bottom half. They might trade out, this and that. So yes, it is a bit aggressive, but I wanted to be aggressive because I wanted to make good, entertaining content for the podcast. I wasn't going to put like, "Hey, take this wide receiver, may be good for the." That's not entertaining. So yes, my take's a little aggressive, and I was just shocked with how like flabbergasted and just flustered Joe Marino was with the take. But here's my justification, right? So they tried to spin it where it's like, is this the kind of receiver the Bills would need, Bills would want? And yes, Joe says that they probably have a couple more needs, and I agree, like interior offensive line, probably a bigger impact player, and maybe an interior defensive line to go along with that Oliver. Maybe a replacement linebacker if you don't feel like paying Tremaine Edmonds, maybe. But like outside of that, I think interior offensive line, interior defensive line. You just drafted Bernard, so I don't think you really need to go target linebacker earlier on in the draft. I think the reason I have a two-pronged thesis for why I put this take and why I believe this is true and why I hope this happens. Neither of which is because I'm super high on Xavier Hutchinson. I love him. He's a first-round grade for me. I talk about him on the Gridiron Heroics podcast, and I've written about him for Gridiron Heroics a little bit, which I do write and appear on now every Thursday for them. So if you want to check me out more of my content, you can go check it out over there. But, so yeah, I have talked elsewhere about how much I'm high on Xavier Hutchinson. And I just think, so this is for the response what they said is that they have Gabe Davis taking the top out the defense. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is your number one. You have guys like Isaiah McKenzie and Jameson Crowder and Khalil Shakir being your slot receivers. So that kind of justifies why I think this is the way to go. Because outside of Davis and Diggs, who Diggs is still can flex into the slot, I don't think anyone outside of Davis is like a true like outside perimeter receiver kind of guy. And I think with the size, Hutchinson, I don't think Iowa State uses Hutchinson to his best ability going down the field. Like they let him go down the field on the outside against Texas, but like they mostly just have him attack the seam and play out the slot like that. So he's got the inside-out versatility you may want, but I think he'd fit best as an outside receiver. And for a guy who is his height, 6'3", and his size profile, I think he has like some of the best like change direction and agility movement for somebody in that like frame of player. So I think if you're looking in the future and like when you're a good team like the Bills are, you need to start thinking about cost-cutting measures and things like that. You just signed Dawson Knox to a big extension. You signed Von Miller to this giant contract. I'm thinking with this pick, so after this season, you're hoping that everything goes well. You win a Super Bowl. Everyone performs super highly. You have 1 year left on Gabe Davis' contract. And with the going rate the receivers are going at now, if he has even close to a 1,000-yard receiving season this year, he might be fetching upwards of $20 million in the market, especially from a team who is really desperate in need, like the Bears or the Giants, who are desperately in need for a number one receiver on the outside. So if you're the Bills, you're at the end of the first round, you're not really liking the interior offensive line or interior defensive line depth at that position. You take this receiver who matches the physical profile of Gabe Davis. Maybe he's not as big of a deep threat right now, but I think once the combine hits and people can actually show off some of his deep speed, which I think is one of his more hidden talents, I think he can match up to what you have in Gabe Davis as a player in your offense. Then you bring him in, you bring him along slowly like they did with Gabe, where they kept signing other receivers to take that outside role and Gabe be the rotate in as a deep threat outside receiver guy while they had more traditional route running guys like Emmanuel Sanders and other guys and John Brown who opposed Stephon Diggs. So now Gabe Davis has his last year in his contract where he might be fetching anywhere between $18 to like $22 million, which you don't really can afford as a high-end team that has a lot of money on the payroll when it comes to your quarterback and other receivers and defensive talent. Plus you got to pay Jordan Poyer. Maybe you draft a safety to replace Poyer, but I feel like the communication aspect plus your backups, I think Poyer should be paid at least for another year or two, and I'm not really high on much of the safeties at that range anyway. So I think getting a guy in who can rotate in for a year, learn from other guys, learn from Gabe Davis himself before Gabe leaves to go get a $20+ million contract if he continues to perform the way he does, I think that's something that a good GMs will do in that position where they are, where it's basically a high second with where you're picking. And in addition, I think Hutchinson brings something to the offense that Gabe Davis brings, as well as being a little bit more well-rounded of a receiver. I love Gabe Davis, but I think his inside, like short area quickness routes, I think Hutchinson could do those a little bit better at the next level, pro level kind of thing, where Davis has him beat as more of a deep threat kind of guy. So it does trade-offs, but I think because I'm so high on Hutchinson, and because I think they're going to need to look on to move on from Gabe Davis, that was my reason for it. Yes, it was a bit more aggressive. Like I said, you don't want to make those kind of claims, but I was just trying to make a take to, it's spiced to take up a little bit for the podcast for them. But yeah, that's my reaction to the draft dudes reacting to my take. Joe is pretty funny with his reaction there, kind of just guffawed in my general direction, so that's entertaining. I'm going to start putting in more takes now just so I can get some more reactions that gave me a big smile when I heard it on my way home from school today. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, check out the rest of my stuff. I'm bringing the podcast back. It should be posted before this episode. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check out the new podcast. I'm doing it with a couple new guys. Kind of copped a draft dudes topic where it's we did 2 lies and a truth for takes on the season. We recorded it last week, so it's just going up now. And yeah, that's going to be maybe the crew we roll with from now on. Go check out the Keel Pro 88 Patreon to get access to all of my draft profiles and things like that, as well as Caleb's, who I'm doing it with. It's only $1 a month. Patreon.com/KeelPro88, KIELPRO88, my bad. And yeah, other than that, just follow on social medias, check out Gridiron Heroics, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.